This story was shared on my channel a month ago, but it has recently received some updates that I believe could be of interest to you. In the description, I will include a timestamp, so you can easily skip the sections that have already been covered. The journey begins with the difficult realization that, after raising my daughter for 15 years, I discovered an unsettling truth about my marriage. I learned that my wife had a secret affair, which ultimately led me to find out that I am not my daughter's biological father. Now, 4 years have passed since that revelation, and I thought I had moved on. However, after this past Memorial Day, it seems the emotions connected to that situation have resurfaced, and I find myself in need of advice. For some time now, I have been visiting various subreddits, hoping that reading about other people's experiences might provide me with some comfort or useful insights, particularly if I could find someone who faced a similar situation. Unfortunately, I haven't encountered anyone with a comparable experience, leaving my story feeling rather unique. Before I continue, I want to clarify that I am not looking for validation or to defend my experience. Your judgments about whether my story is true or not do not matter to me. The events I am about to recount have already transpired, and I believe that I had come to terms with everything. Yet, after the events of last weekend, all those buried feelings of anger have returned with a renewed intensity. Even though I am back home with my fiancé, that deep-seated resentment I have towards my ex-wife refuses to fade away. It has been a long and challenging road. I spent years in anger management because of what took place and the turmoil that ensued. Now, at 39 years old, looking back, I realize that I was only 18 when I first met my ex-wife, Maria. At that time, I was deep in the gang life as a member of the Latin Kings, having been involved with them since the age of 13. My life was often filled with chaos and trouble. Maria was different. She was a church-going woman, and my grandmother often took me to Sunday Massachusetts. When I met her, it truly felt like love at first sight. I asked my cousin, who was friends with her, to introduce us, but he was hesitant. He feared that I would bring trouble into her life. Have you ever met someone who inspires you to be a better person? For me, that was Maria. When I learned that she attended church almost every day, I made a point to hang out near the steps, talking to her and offering to walk her home. She made me feel like I had worth, and soon our friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. For a year and a half, I felt on top of the world. I slowly distanced myself from the gang lifestyle, earned my GED, became a regular churchgoer, and began dreaming about a positive future. However, life took an unexpected turn when I encountered some trouble while at a store. I ran into someone with whom I had a history of conflict. Even though I tried my best to ignore their provocations, I found myself in a heated situation. When I was stabbed in the shoulder blade, something inside me snapped. I reacted violently, and the aftermath landed me in jail. In that moment, all the progress I had made began to crumble. Maria was understandably upset, my grandmother kept reminding me of my past failures, and my cousin voiced his doubts about my ability to change. Fortunately, my public defender recognized my efforts to improve and managed to get me released after a month of confinement. Despite her anger, Maria continued to visit me almost daily during my time in jail. A month after my release, I received the life-changing news that I was going to be a father. The thought of becoming a dad motivated me to strive for a better life. I didn't want my child to grow up with a father who would either be dead or imprisoned. Shortly after, Maria and I eloped, and I enrolled in trade school to become a mechanic, dedicating myself to building a future for my family. When our daughter Luna was born, it was almost the worst day of my life. Maria faced serious complications during childbirth, resulting in her bleeding heavily and going into shock. She underwent a double hysterectomy and spent months in the hospital. Luna became the center of my universe. My promise to Maria was that our daughter would have a better life than the one we had. Over the years, I worked hard to fulfill that promise. I saved enough money to move our family to the suburbs, becoming a homeowner, and even volunteered as a Girl Scout leader, surprising everyone who knew my past. I made sure Luna attended private school, learned self-defense, and strived to be the perfect husband. Growing up, I had no positive male role models. I was surrounded by a flawed family dynamic. Television dads were the closest thing I had to a guide for what constituted a healthy relationship. I often find myself imitating the marriage I watched on television as the years unfolded. Over time, I built my own life. I became the owner of a garage, a testament to my hard work and ambition. My cousin took a different path and became a pastor, something that surprised me but also made sense given his character. My grandmother, however, remained a constant challenge, her nagging still causing me stress. Despite the ups and downs, my relationship with my wife has only grown stronger. I have worked hard to maintain my physique from my prison days, wanting to stay in shape and be healthy. However, not everything has been easy, especially my relationship with my daughter Luna. Since she turned 13, she has pulled away from me in ways I never expected. It felt like she suddenly started to hate me. She no longer wanted my hugs, and I could see her rolling her eyes whenever I told her I loved her. When I asked about her day at school, she would simply ignore me. These moments hurt deeply. Mary Soul, my wife, noticed my pain and reassured me that this behavior was typical for a teenager. She encouraged me to be patient and to wait it out, assuring me that Luna would eventually come back around. For 2 long years, this distance lingered. As Luna's Kinera celebration approached, I wanted to make it special. I bought her everything she wanted, hoping to bridge the gap between us, but she remained disrespectful. There were moments when the old me wanted to resurface, to put her in her place and remind her who I was, but instead, I sought advice from my cousin. I vented my frustrations and doubts about being a good father. He listened patiently and then offered to pray for me, which gave me a small sense of comfort. As the father-daughter dance loomed closer, I realized I needed a slideshow to celebrate our relationship. I gathered a few pictures from the past but quickly realized I had no recent images of us together. The last time we smiled together was on her 13th birthday, and those images were trapped on her broken tablet. Desperate to access those memories, I took the tablet to a repair shop, willing to spend whatever it took. After a day and $300, the technician handed it back to me, and I felt a rush of relief. I knew her passcode but didn't want to invade her privacy. All I wanted were those pictures. When I opened the gallery, I found images of my little girl, smiling and happy with me. It felt good to see those memories. But when I scrolled down, something changed dramatically. A series of messages appeared on the screen, conversations between Luna and my wife. They were discussing how Luna didn't want to dance with me, and it stung deeply. My wife had reassured me that being her father meant loving and raising her, but Luna's messages revealed a different truth. She claimed my cousin was her father and expressed her eagerness to turn 18 so she could finally tell me the truth and live with him. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my heart drop, dizziness setting in as the room spun. I needed to sit down, the weight of it all was too much. My wife tried to defend my role in Luna's life, but it only made matters worse. Luna insisted that her real father was my cousin, expressing gratitude that I wasn't her father. Mary Soul became upset, voicing her frustration over my cousin's choice to reveal the truth to Luna 2 years ago. As they continued to argue, I felt a storm of emotions rising within me, anger, sorrow, and grief. I wanted to scream and cry, torn apart by feelings I couldn't fully express. In that dark moment, I knew I needed to distance myself to avoid making any rash decisions. I told Mary Soul I needed to focus on work for the sake of our finances, but instead, I drove to Manhattan to find my old public defender. He had risen from a low-level attorney to managing a well-respected firm, and I was surprised he remembered me. I was his first case, after all. When we sat down, I poured out my heart, sharing everything that had transpired. I handed him the tablet, and as he turned it on, the messages continued to flow. This time, Luna was speaking with my cousin, her biological father. Their conversation revealed how she felt he was always there for her, that they shared so much in common, even referring to him as Papi. I was devastated as I listened to this exchange. My public defender asked what I wanted to do, and with a heavy heart, I responded that I wanted to go full scorched earth. I wanted to ruin any chance of a relationship between them, and he confirmed that this was my decision. As we mapped out a plan, I felt a sense of urgency. Everything needed to be filed before the upcoming court date in 2 weeks. We spent the next 12 hours solidifying what I now considered my course of action. We settled down at a table and devoted the next 12 hours to outlining everything that needed to be done. I meticulously followed his instructions, ensuring that every detail was executed flawlessly. With a heavy heart, I made the decision to put my business up for sale. I contacted the private school and informed them that I would not be paying for the upcoming school year. I also went ahead and closed the college accounts and the savings I had set aside for Luna. It was time to prepare to list my house for sale online. I made sure that no one caught wind of my plans. I adhered to his instructions perfectly, though there was one significant deviation on the day of the quint. That day unfolded without any problems. The entire family gathered, and I watched as Luna smiled and enjoyed herself. Mary Soul kept checking in on me, asking if I was alright, and I lied to her. It was difficult to lie to Mary Soul. From the very first moment we met, I had never been dishonest with her. During those 2 weeks leading up to the quint, every time I kissed her, held her, or made love to her, it felt unbearable not to scream the truth. The hardest part was grappling with the resentment I felt towards her. She had knowingly allowed me to raise another man's child. She had slept with my cousin, a man I considered a brother, the godfather of my child, and my closest confidant when I eloped. The intensity of my rage was overwhelming. When the time came for the father-daughter dance, I called Mary Soul to the center of the stage. She looked annoyed but complied. I had the music ready, and as we began to dance, she smiled at me. That smile, which I had longed to see for years, now felt like a dagger in my heart. I didn't want to see her smiling at me in that moment. As we danced, I had arranged a slideshow displaying pictures of the two of us together. Towards the end of the song, I included screenshots of her text messages with her mother and real father. The impact was immediate. Mary Soul looked as if she had seen a ghost. Luna remained fixated on the screen, while my cousin stared at me, his eyes filled with fear. Mary Soul rushed towards me, insisting that she could explain everything, but I interrupted her to say that I had filed for divorce. I told her that she could explain her actions in court. As she desperately grabbed my arm and begged me to reconsider, I informed Luna that I had worked tirelessly to provide for her, and now she didn't deserve any of it. I turned to walk away, but not before telling my cousin that every time I saw him, I would knock him out. And then I did just that. The aftermath was harsh. Mary Soul and Luna found refuge at my grandmother's apartment. Her family was shocked and disgusted with her, refusing to support her in the aftermath. In a surprising turn of events, her father actually apologized to me, despite having never liked me. Just days earlier, I had been viewed as the former lowlife, yet now I was seen as the perfect husband and father. My grandmother had the audacity to recount the story of Abraham, who returned from battle after 3 years to find his wife had given birth to another man's child, raising the child as his own. She suggested I should emulate Abraham. In response, I told her to leave my house. A few days later, Mary Soul returned, tears streaming down her face as soon as she laid eyes on me. She claimed that it was an accident. When I was arrested, she had been so furious, and my cousin had been there to console her. One thing led to another, and they ended up sleeping together just that once. She insisted she had been faithful ever since and was even willing to take a lie detector test to prove it. I asked her how long she had known that Luna wasn't actually my child, and the tears that fell from her eyes told me all I needed to know. She had known from the very beginning. I asked her to leave, but she suggested counseling, claiming I was overreacting and that we could work things out. She insisted that I was still Luna's father regardless of the past. My temper flared, and I repeated the phrase, "Get over it," dozens of times at full volume while tossing her belongings out the door. I called her a lying traitor and made it clear that I didn't want to see her face again, asserting that the life I had built no longer included her before shoving her out. Weeks passed, during which she continued to bombard my phone with messages. Not once did Luna reach out to me. Mary Soul was taken aback to learn that I had sold my business. She was even more surprised when she found out I was holding an open house, leading her to come back unannounced. She burst into the room, screaming and pointing at the viewers, demanding that they leave her house at once. Her voice was filled with desperation as she turned to me, pleading for help. She claimed I was ruining our marriage and insisted that I had no right to sell our home, the very place where we had raised our child together. I faced her with determination, expressing my feelings about the house that held so many secrets. It was a place where I had unknowingly cared for another man's child. When I sold it, I promised her half of the proceeds, but I urged her to leave before I called the police. I knew it was a bluff. If she played the victim, the authorities might take her side, and I could end up in trouble. Fortunately, she complied and left the room. A short while later, my cousin arrived wanting to have a conversation. In a moment of anger, I knocked him out, dragged him outside, and closed the door firmly behind me. Mediation was off the table. I had made up my mind. My ex-wife, Mary Soul, wanted to reconcile, but I was only interested in moving forward with the divorce. My attorney swiftly filed for a fast-track divorce, and within 3 months, we found ourselves at the Nassau County Courthouse. During this time, I hardly spoke to anyone. I immersed myself in research about divorce proceedings, often coming across horror stories about the court system. Yet, my experience was different. I was assigned a female judge who was fair and impartial. My attorney handled everything with professionalism. Mary Soul's lawyer made an attempt to bring up my past, referencing my teenage years in a gang, as if that could somehow justify me being a poor husband and father. However, my attorney quickly countered those claims, and the judge reprimanded Mary Soul's attorney for attempting to shame someone who had turned their life around. My lawyer presented all the necessary evidence and proposed a lump sum for alimony in conjunction with the upcoming sale of our house and business. Although Mary Soul pleaded with me to reconsider, I remained steadfast in my decision. Eventually, when she understood I wouldn't change my mind, she agreed to the terms. The biggest shocker came during the discussion of child support. My attorney presented text messages from Luna, our supposed daughter, showing that she was aware I was not her biological father. It was heartbreaking to read how she expressed her excitement about finally being with her real father and the relief of escaping a lie. Mary Soul was blindsided by this revelation. She yelled at me, begging me not to do this to Luna, claiming that I was her father because I had raised her. As much as it pained me, if Luna hadn't expressed those feelings, I might have reconsidered. There were fleeting moments when I wanted to reach out and salvage our family, but seeing Luna's continued messages to her real parents reminded me of my resolve. To this day, I grapple with what hurts more, being deceived by a woman I loved or realizing that a child I devoted myself to could push me away so easily. The judge sat quietly for a long time, reviewing page after page of text messages. In the end, she sided with me, ruling that I would not be held financially responsible for Luna and that my name could be removed from her birth certificate. Furthermore, my attorney filed motions to require my cousin to provide child support and to sue him in civil court for all the money I had spent raising Luna, including private school tuition, dance classes, Girl Scouts, and horseback riding lessons. After my attorney explained to the judge that my cousin had committed fraud by allowing me to raise his daughter without any financial support, the judge surprisingly agreed to my requests. I didn't bother looking at Mary Soul when the decision was made. As I walked out of the courthouse, her cries reached my ears. She lamented that she had only cheated once and had been faithful ever since, but I was beyond caring at that point. Weeks later, my ex called me, shocked to learn that I had stopped payments for Luna's private school and activities. I told her to inform Luna of the changes. All her activities were brought to my attention, and I insisted she reach out to her baby daddy before ending the conversation. This was a call I never expected to receive from Luna, especially after everything that had happened. I could hear the tears in her voice as she shared the news that she would have to attend public school again, a result of moving back to our old neighborhood. It was clear to me how scared she felt about the changes and how deeply she longed for us to be a family once more. In response, I told her to speak to her real father, the man she was truly seeking. I raised my voice, frustrated, reminding her that she knew the truth for years. I had seen the messages exchanged between them, and I remembered her own words expressing gratitude that someone like me wasn't her father. This stung, especially as I had turned my life around the moment I learned I was going to become a father. After our conversation, I ended the call abruptly. In those moments of reflection, I found myself contemplating dark thoughts, including thoughts of ending my own life or even bringing harm to my cousin. But I decided he needed to pay, a choice driven by anger and hurt. He owed me $500,000, all of which was rightfully mine, as my ex had agreed to a lump sum settlement. I didn't care if that money stemmed from the church, my pain was overwhelming. Soon after, I left New York, aiming for a fresh start, and picked Idaho without any clear purpose other than to distance myself from the past. I opened a new shop, bought a house, and attempted to rebuild my life. However, for 2 long years, I struggled with trust issues. I saw a therapist, attended anger management classes, and even tried rage rooms to channel my feelings. The struggle was real and, at times, exhausting until I found my way back to church. Ironically, it was within those walls that I met my fiancée, Jocelyn. Jocelyn was truly special, she had just turned 30, and we instantly connected. I shared the entire story of my past with her, including my challenges with trust, and she listened with understanding and compassion. A year later, she told me that I was going to be a dad again. She insisted on a DNA test for peace of mind, which I appreciated. I had almost forgotten what happiness felt like until our son was born. The joy was overwhelming, and I reached out to my grandmother after years of silence. She cried tears of joy upon hearing the news, eager to meet her great-grandchild. Guilt laced her words as she mentioned her age, 90, and her desire for one last reunion. I agreed, and we made our way to New York, renting a car and driving to Bushwick. Returning to my old neighborhood was unsettling, and I had a strong dislike for it. Just seeing one person from the past could send the whole neighborhood buzzing about my return. My grandmother met my son and my fiancé, making a casual remark in Spanish about Jocelyn being white, to which I simply nodded along. I planned to spend the week doing the tourist thing, wanting to make this visit special for Jocelyn, who had never been to New York before. But things do not always go as planned. Suddenly, I heard my ex call my name from downstairs. When I looked out the window, I was taken aback by how much weight she had gained. My grandmother urged me to speak with her, and Jocelyn supported my decision. When I went downstairs, an uncomfortable silence settled in. Just like that, all the anger rushed back like a tidal wave. My ex, Mary Soul, greeted me, oddly complimenting my appearance while expressing her own dissatisfaction with how she looked. She quickly informed me that she missed me and had not been with anyone else since our divorce. I chose to ignore her, but she went on to mention that I was now a grandfather, causing me to shoot her a skeptical glance. Apparently, Luna had gotten involved with a decent guy and had a baby at 18, while her baby daddy joined the Marines to support their family. Unfortunately, her father had distanced himself, only providing child support without any emotional connection, leaving the ministry for a job at Banco Popular just a couple of blocks away. To add insult to injury, Mary Soul told me that Luna had named her baby after me. I couldn't bear to look at her any longer. Mary Soul wanted me to wait for Luna, who was on her way, but I had no interest in engaging further. I simply walked away and returned to my grandmother's house. I didn't even need to explain to Jocelyn what had happened, she knew the moment we left the building. When we reached the elevator, I shared the details, and she smiled, reassuring me that everything would be okay. I could see the mixed emotions on Mary Soul's face as we exited. She was glaring at Jocelyn as if she were a threat. Without missing a beat, Jocelyn introduced my son to her with a sense of pride, signaling that we were moving forward, leaving the past behind us for good. Without missing a beat, she introduced my son to her. In that moment, she said, "I would like you to meet his biological child," and it felt like a sharp twist of a knife right in my heart. It was as if she knew exactly how much pain I was feeling. Mary Soul kept trying to hold me back, saying that Luna felt regret about what she had done and that Jocelyn wanted me to consider making amends. But I was overwhelmed by my anger. Ignoring Mary Soul's pleas, I jumped into my car, my emotions boiling inside me. Jocelyn urged me to reach out, to extend an olive branch, so I reluctantly gave her my phone number, letting Luna know she could call me. As I waited at a red light, I spotted my cousin by the Cato stand. I don't know what came over me, but I got out of the car, ran up to him, and started attacking him. Jocelyn screamed for me to stop, but when our eyes met, I could see the fear in his expression. I felt a rush of anger, and in a moment of rage, I spat on him and walked away, leaving him behind. Now, I find myself back home, focusing on my responsibilities as a dad and trying to be a good fiancé to a wonderful woman. Despite this, when I'm alone with my thoughts, that anger resurfaces. Luna did send me a text, including a picture of her smiling with her son, apologizing for what she had done. Yet, I can't shake the doubt. I wonder if she's truly sorry for missing me or if she regrets not having the father she thought I would be. My feelings are a confusing swirl, and the fear of reaching out to her keeps me on edge. I deeply desire to move past this chapter in my life. My family used to mean everything to me, my daughter was my entire world. Even after all these years, the emotional scars remain, and the pain still ignites anger within me. I understand that I need to let go and move forward, but the struggle feels immense. I want to reach out to Luna, but that fear holds me back. People around me say I should give her another chance, but all I can think of are the past messages and the constant lies I encountered. I find myself in need of help, and my usual ways of coping are failing me. I appreciate anyone who takes the time to read this. I needed a place to vent. I don't mind if you think this is fake, that doesn't matter to me. Your support is appreciated. Update 1, I am currently waiting for the moderators to approve this post. It has taken some time, and yesterday was Father's Day. Luna attempted to call me several times. I stared at the phone, feeling the urge to answer, but I didn't. Instead, my mind was consumed by thoughts of those past messages, what she said about her mother, her real father, and her friends. So, I let the calls go unanswered. Eventually, I listened to her voicemail. She sounded so happy, briefly apologizing for her actions, but to me, it didn't sound genuine, just a passive acknowledgement. Perhaps I am overthinking this. She spoke about her son and fiancé and asked me to call her. Just a simple request, but it ignited my fury. My grandmother and my fiancé have both encouraged me to give Luna a chance, but when I asked my grandmother whether Luna or Mary Soul had ever asked about me during the 4 years I was away, she said Mary Soul did frequently, but Luna never did. This only added to my twisted thoughts that Luna might want me in her life for the sake of her child, or perhaps she sees me as someone who could be taken advantage of. This realization makes me angry. Even Mary Soul has been trying to call me constantly, and I'm considering changing my phone number entirely. I spent most of Father's Day at the gym, hitting the heavy bag, trying to release my built-up frustration. I have an appointment today with an anger management group, hoping they can offer me a new perspective. If this ever gets published by the moderators, I would appreciate your thoughts as well. For now, I am navigating through this on my own. Update 2, I sent Luna a brief email that simply asked, "What do you want?" I didn't expect the lengthy response that followed. In her email, she began by apologizing profusely for how she had acted. She explained that when she discovered I wasn't her father, she became angry and confronted her mother. This confrontation made her cry, and she made her mother promise not to tell me how she felt, as she was feeling lost. As time passed, she started to talk more with my cousin, her real father, who told her about my past and the violent things I had done, things I had kept secret from her. This revelation further fueled her anger towards me. As they grew closer, she began to pull away from me. Luna admitted that she occasionally felt bad about how she treated me, but my cousin reinforced her negative feelings. Then, there was the day of the Quinn. While we were dancing, she realized how foolish her behavior had been. She came to an important realization about her behavior and how foolish she had been acting. Along with this, it also dawned on her just how deeply I cared for her. Then, her messages suddenly lit up my screen, a sign that she was starting to understand the situation more clearly. In the days that followed, her relatives on my wife's side encouraged her to give me some space and not to reach out to me, and she decided to follow their advice. She expressed to me that she felt like she was watching her family disintegrate around her because of her actions, and she felt utterly helpless to fix it. Although she said she understood my reasons for what I had done, she still had this strong urge to connect with me. Her grandfather played a significant role during this time, constantly reminding her that I truly loved her, that I had raised her, and that despite everything she was seeing through our messages, I would ultimately do the right thing. She held on to his words and sincerely believed him. However, during the divorce process, her mother fell into a dark place. She became withdrawn, hardly spoke, and barely ate. It was as if she was just going through the motions of life. When Luna found out that my name had been taken off her birth certificate, she experienced an overwhelming panic attack. Her mother told her they would have to move back to Brooklyn, and when Luna inquired about her school life, her mother coldly replied that the life she had was provided by me, and that I was no longer her father. Desperate for connection, she reached out to me, crying and begging, but our conversation ended poorly, with me cursing her out before hanging up. This left her in tears for days. Luna attempted to get support from my cousin, but he largely ignored her plea for help. Even her attempts to seek solace at the church were met with rejection. She was asked to leave and called a mistake. Meanwhile, her mother isolated herself, essentially shutting Luna out of her life. Their interactions were minimal, and when they did speak, her mother would berate her, telling her that she was ungrateful and was to blame for losing the love of her life. It got to the point where her grandfather had to step in, reminding her mother that it was her own infidelity that caused the upheaval in their family. As a result of all this turmoil, Luna found it hard to stay at home. It was during this difficult period that she met the father of her child, who worked at the local bodega. They were both the same age, and after a few months of talking, things progressed, leading to her unexpected pregnancy. Her grandfather was furious at first, but when her boyfriend insisted he wanted to marry her, the tension eased a little. Luna came to view her pregnancy as a blessing in disguise. Slowly, her mother began to reconnect with her, even starting to leave her room to accompany Luna to doctor appointments. Being a senior in high school while pregnant was challenging, but she managed to push through it. A month before her child was born, she graduated, and her boyfriend decided to join the Marines. He wanted to propose before his departure, but Luna held a strong desire for a wedding. He seemed comfortable naming their son after me, which stirred emotions because he had grown up without his own father. In his mind, sharing a name with me was a reminder of what he lacked. When she heard I was in town, she rushed to my grandmother's apartment, even receiving a speeding ticket in her haste to see me. It was essential for her to apologize and introduce me to her son. Unfortunately, she arrived late, and tears filled her eyes when her mother gave her my number. Although she wanted to call me right away, she hesitated, aware of the gossip circulating in the neighborhood about my altercation with her father. My life had moved forward, and Luna was torn. She was happy to learn she had a younger brother but saddened to see that her mother was struggling more than ever. After reading an email from Mary Soul, I decided to reach out to her and confirm what I had learned, that Luna had been largely ignored and blamed for the divorce over the years. Initially, anger bubbled up inside me, but hearing her cry softened my heart. I urged her to move on, to find someone else, but Mary Soul insisted that I would always be her husband. This declaration brought a pang of sadness to my heart as I listened to her voice. I will always be her husband. The realization of this truth brought a subtle pain to my heart. To navigate this complex situation, I asked my grandmother to visit my cousin. I needed to have a conversation with him. As soon as he heard my voice, he broke down in tears, pleading for my forgiveness. I couldn't help but question him about his actions. I needed to know why he hadn't stepped up as a father to Luna, my daughter. More importantly, I wanted to understand why he had turned her against me. His answer was one of envy. He admitted that he had been in love with Mary Soul and felt that I had taken her from him. When I faced my arrest, he manipulated Mary Soul and convinced her to turn away from me. However, Mary eventually saw through his deceit and ended things with him. By that time, she was already pregnant, and they both understood that the child was his, even though it was meant to be a secret. Mary Soul made a sacrifice, undergoing a double hysterectomy, believing it to be God's punishment for her betrayal. When Luna turned 13, my cousin, drowning in his own jealousy, made the choice to ruin my life. He succeeded, but I promised him that when we meet again in hell, I would be his eternal torturer. After I hung up the phone, I felt a mix of emotions, but my resolve remained strong. Throughout this turmoil, Jocelyn stood by my side. She assured me that everything would be all right. I maintained communication with Luna through email. On the 4th of the month, we spoke for over an hour, during which she cried a lot. I also had a conversation with her boyfriend, who asked for my blessing to marry her. I found it both amusing and honorable. My own wedding is scheduled for next month, and Jocelyn encouraged me to invite Luna. Interestingly, Luna expressed a desire for me to give her away at her own wedding in November. My future father-in-law took the time to sit me down and share his perspective. He admitted that he couldn't fully understand my situation but respected the path I chose because that path had helped save his daughter and also brought him a charming grandson, along with a future son-in-law he would do anything for. This made me chuckle, but he emphasized the importance of letting go of anger, urging me to start forgiving while still holding on to the lessons learned. He was right. Consequently, we sent an invitation to Luna for my wedding and even offered to cover her plane ticket. Her fiancé graciously mentioned that he would do some work at my garage to pay it off when they arrived. I found myself developing a fondness for him. As for the prospect of giving Luna away, I decided to wait and see how my own wedding unfolds first. My gratitude extends to those who offered advice and shared supportive messages with me. The kindness received made a significant difference as I prepared for my wedding next month. In the following days, so much transpired in such a brief period. I appreciated the overwhelming support within my direct messages, even acknowledging the negativity that came my way. For those who sent hate messages, I calmly reminded them that everyone's experience is different and that it's unfair to judge my feelings unless they had walked in my shoes. Leading up to the wedding, I felt nervous, walking on eggshells. Jocelyn was radiating happiness, and my future in-laws were stressed about the number of guests. It felt as if the whole town was attending. Meanwhile, I found myself in Boise, waiting for Luna and her family to arrive at the airport. In the days leading up to their visit, Luna and I communicated often. She mostly cried and apologized, while I listened patiently. During those moments, I also conversed with her fiancé, who seemed very grounded. When their plane finally landed, I felt paralyzed by fear, not because I was seeing her after so long, but because I worried that my anger might bubble over. When Luna spotted me at the terminal, she sprinted over, crying. In that instant, I was transported back to when she was just 7 years old. I couldn't help but picture that child in my mind. As she ran towards me shouting, "Daddy," the sight triggered a wave of emotions. The moment she wrapped her arms around me, she began to sob loudly, drawing the attention of those around us. She repeated, "Sorry," over and over, desperately asking for my forgiveness. I held her close for more than 15 minutes as she clung to me, refusing to let go. It took both her fiancé and me to gently encourage her to release her grip, as if she feared that letting go would mean losing me again. Once she regained her composure, her fiancé introduced himself properly, and they introduced me to their child. The moment I held the infant in my arms, I couldn't contain my tears. My feelings were not rooted in anger but in the overwhelming emotion of the reunion. Holding this tiny being brought forth a flood of memories and love. Though Luna stood before me as a young woman now, I couldn't ignore the ties that bind us as father and daughter. Tears streamed down my face as I held the tiny infant in my arms. Luna, the child I cradled, looked just like her mother did when she was only 19 years old. This likeness made me think deeply about Mary's soul and all the memories we shared. During the drive back home, our conversation drifted to Luna's fiancé, who was currently in boot camp. We talked about how he was set on a career in the military and how Luna was taking online courses to catch up in her accounting studies. The drive passed quickly as we filled the silence with our chatter. When we finally arrived at my house, I was greeted by a feast that Jocelyn had prepared for everyone. Since we had been together, Jocelyn had taken to learning how to cook traditional Spanish dishes. However, in the week leading up to Luna's visit, she had really gone all out, trying to impress her. I understood her motivation, especially seeing how well Luna and Jocelyn got along, sharing laughter and stories. Every few minutes, Luna would come over to me for a quick hug before darting back to Jocelyn, where she seemed to feel most at home. Meanwhile, I held my son and grandson, watching Jocelyn introduce Luna to her family. Once the babies were put to bed, I stepped out to the porch to get some fresh air. I noticed Luna's fiancé, Roberto, standing at the edge of the yard, gazing at the herd of bison that roamed in the distance. For a brief moment, I considered giving him a traditional dad talk. However, I decided that it wasn't my place and instead asked him how he felt about the view. His eyes lit up, a look of wonder crossing his face. I understood his amazement. Having spent most of my life in the city, wide open spaces like these were truly breathtaking. After a moment, Roberto turned to me and shared that Luna often expressed her regret about the past. He mentioned that they had been together for 3 years, and not a day went by without her talking about how much she missed me and regretted her actions. That particular sentence stuck with me and replayed in my mind often. At just 19 years old, Roberto showed a maturity beyond his years. The way he spoke made it clear he had faced challenges in life that forced him to grow up quickly. The next day, I had to head to the shop. To my surprise, Luna excitedly jumped into the car with the baby as soon as I arrived. Roberto offered her his encouragement, telling her it was fine to join me and to enjoy our time together. She seemed a little overwhelmed and on the brink of hyperventilating, but I reassured her that we would only work a half day, promising that I would spend the rest of our time together. The look of relief on her face indicated that it was the reassurance she needed. As we drove, I began to see just how deeply traumatized Luna was from the events of the past. I asked Roberto how she was doing and learned that she had severe abandonment issues. She was always worried that he might leave her, despite his constant reassurances of love and commitment. He shared that she often called him, displaying a clinginess that stemmed from her fear of losing him. I realized that my past choices were a large part of the reason for her struggles. Although he understood my actions, I still felt a weight of responsibility for the pain she experienced. Roberto, while a wonderful person, was not very skilled as a mechanic. He knew very little about cars. To help him earn his keep, I had him clean up at the shop. We closed early that day, and when we returned home, Luna practically ran towards me, her expression frantic. I told her I would be back soon, and she hurried back to Roberto, needing that reassurance. Once I got inside, Jocelyn told me that Luna needed to be reminded that everything would be okay and that I wouldn't abandon her again. I was at a loss for words, but Jocelyn held my hands firmly and insisted that Luna was in pain and needed her father during these challenging days. For the next few days, I dedicated my time to reconnecting with Luna. We took a trip to my in-laws' ranch, where I introduced her to the bison and elk and took her on a lovely hike. 2 days before the wedding, I felt compelled to apologize to her for leaving and for how I had reacted in the past. However, she wouldn't hear of it. Luna insisted that I had nothing to be sorry for and claimed her own actions were to blame for the problems between us. I had to stop her from taking all the guilt. I began to cry as I told her that it was not her fault. I was the one who was angry and hurt, and I felt I was the one who should be apologizing. Our tears flowed freely as we held each other, a mix of pain and healing in those moments. On the day of my wedding, Luna seemed to be in a better place, showing more happiness. In a surprising twist, Jocelyn decided at the last minute that Luna would be one of the bridesmaids, while Roberto was made a groomsman. The wedding felt like a fresh start, and the joy surrounding it provided a glimmer of hope for our family moving forward. Roberto was a groomsman at a recent wedding, which turned out to be a wonderful event. During the reception, I decided to ask the DJ to play a special song from Luna's quinceañera. I wanted to dance with her, and as we moved together on the dance floor, I noticed that she was crying. She held on to me tightly throughout the entire dance, and seeing her emotions made me realize how much this moment meant to both of us. I hadn't experienced such happiness in a long time. After the wedding, I let Luna and her fiancé, Roberto, stay at my home while I traveled to Hawaii for my honeymoon. During my absence, they took care of Luna's little brother, and when I returned from my trip, Luna greeted me with a warm hug, showing her appreciation for what I had done. It felt wonderful to have that connection with her again. Roberto informed me that he would soon be deployed to Afghanistan for his military service, and he asked if Luna could live near us in the meantime. He offered to cover the cost of an apartment close to my home until he could buy a house for them. I wholeheartedly agreed to this arrangement. Just 2 days ago, they headed back to the city to prepare for the upcoming changes in their lives. As I mentioned, things have been quite eventful lately. Luna's wedding is scheduled for November, while Roberto is set to leave in December. Roberto sent me an amount equivalent to what would cover a year's rent for a townhouse community located just 3 miles from my own house. However, Jocelyn suggested a different idea. Instead of renting an apartment, we could set up a double-wide trailer on our property for Luna. This way, she could save her money to buy a house when Roberto returns home. At the same time, I've been receiving numerous calls from Mary Soul, and based on her messages, it's clear that she is unhappy about Luna's new living arrangements. Despite this, my focus remains on my family and on repairing my relationship with my daughter. As an update, I was waiting for Luna to return from her honeymoon so that I could show her this post. Our therapist recommended that we maintain full transparency regarding our situation, and I wanted to share everything carefully, as it also concerns her. Luna read the post, but I made sure she didn't see any of the hurtful comments, especially since she had been so emotional about it. However, she was fine with me posting an update. Then, a tragedy struck with the passing of my grandmother, which caused me to pause everything for a while. Now, picking up from where I left off, Jocelyn and I successfully acquired a double-wide trailer for our property. We ensured everything was ready for Luna and Roberto's arrival. Many people have questioned why Jocelyn has been so adamant about fostering peace during this time. Initially, she didn't want my unresolved feelings to impact our family dynamics, and she understood that I needed to find peace within myself for everyone's sake. I truly appreciate her for that support. In the days leading up to Luna's departure from New York, Mary Soul was persistently calling me. On the day Luna left, I finally spoke with her. She was distraught and angry, accusing me of taking her child and grandchild away from her. I tried to explain that my goal was to rebuild my relationship with Luna, but she quickly shifted the conversation to asking me about mending my relationship with her. I had to be honest and tell her that I could not focus on that right now. This response made her cry, and she hung up the phone. When Luna and Roberto arrived at the trailer, they were both very pleased with it. Roberto immediately began discussing how he could repay me for helping them out. I told him that it wasn't necessary, but he insisted, and I appreciated his gesture. A few days later, Luna and I attended our first therapy session together, where I learned more about her struggles. She had been taking anxiety medication and had been suffering from chronic panic attacks. One significant revelation from our sessions was Luna's remorse over her past experiences. She had endured years of verbal abuse from Mary Soul, which left a lasting impact on her. Some of the details shocked me, and they were later confirmed when I spoke with my former father-in-law. It became clear that Mary Soul had emotionally and verbally mistreated Luna, and my cousin had contributed to her struggles. Despite my own feelings and the actions I took, I realized that I had also hurt Luna deeply. Just 2 weeks after their arrival, Roberto received the news that he would be deployed earlier than expected. This development prompted them to move their wedding date up. Initially, Luna wanted to wait until he returned home, but Roberto insisted on getting married before he left. Jocelyn and I offered to help with the wedding expenses, but Luna's only request was that I walk her down the aisle and give her away on her special day. There has been talk from some about the need for a DNA test since there weren't any court documents confirming paternity due to circumstances surrounding the situation. However, let me clarify that such a test is unnecessary. Luna's blood type is O positive, while mine is AB negative, and Mary Soul's is B positive. Thus, the details surrounding paternity are clear without needing additional testing. I am AB negative, and my ex-wife, Mary Soul, has AB positive blood type, while my cousin has O positive. Regardless of the complications that arose in our lives, it is important to me that Luna is my daughter. I often wish that I had not let my anger cloud my judgment. The wedding was scaled down since it took place at my former in-law's ranch. Only a few family members were invited, including my ex-father-in-law, Roberto, my grandmother, and Mary Soul. Unfortunately, my grandmother could not attend because she was feeling unwell, and Mary Soul was hospitalized after attempting to harm herself. This news deeply affected Luna, and I found myself filled with anger toward Mary Soul for expecting Luna to return to New York to take care of her in the days leading up to the wedding. During this time, I discovered that I was going to be a father again, which filled me with happiness. Meanwhile, I also saw Roberto struggling with his responsibilities when it came to breaking horses, and I began to teach him once more how to fix cars, which I enjoyed. I appreciated the bond one was forming with this young man. The day before the wedding, my former father-in-law arrived with Roberto's mother. She is an exceptionally kind woman, and I made sure to praise her for raising such a fine young man. My former father-in-law remained stoic, as he always does, but we had a meaningful conversation. He expressed disappointment about my departure from the family but acknowledged that he understood the circumstances, emphasizing his hope that his daughter would eventually move on as well. On the wedding day, Jocelyn served as Luna's maid of honor. It was a struggle for me to hold back tears as I walked her down the aisle. I could only imagine how difficult it was for her. During the reception, we played the song Cinderella by Stephen Curtis Chapman for our father-daughter dance. Luna clung to me tightly, and I could feel the emotion of the moment. After the wedding, during their honeymoon, life began to return to a sense of normalcy. I had intended to provide an update on our lives, however, just a few days before they returned home, my grandmother passed away. This loss was incredibly painful for me, as she was more than just my grandmother, she was like a mother to me. Since I never knew my parents, who died in a car accident when I was just a few months old, my grandmother raised my cousin and me together. While preparing to travel to New York for her funeral, I tried to manage my emotions and prepare to see my cousin. Our family made the journey to New York, and my grandmother was laid to rest in Cypress Hill Cemetery. During the funeral, with my wife, daughter, and son-in-law by my side, I felt a sense of calm rather than anger. I chose not to acknowledge my cousin during the service, which seemed to trouble him. As we exited the funeral, he attempted to speak with me, almost pleading for me to confront him and express my anger. For reasons I didn't fully understand, my silence seemed to hurt him even more. A few days after the funeral, before returning to Idaho, Luna and I visited Mary Soul at the hospital. She was thrilled to see us, expressing sadness over missing the wedding. We thought everything was going well until we had to leave. At that point, she started to cry, pleading with the orderly that she wanted to go home with her husband, begging me to take her home as well, saying I was the love of her life. I was heartbroken, and tears streamed down my face as they escorted her away. Luna also broke down, and it took a long time before either of us had the strength to leave the visitors' lounge. My former father-in-law shared with us that Mary Soul had not been the same since our divorce. She continued to celebrate my birthday and our anniversary, despite moving on with her life. He told me about the ongoing arguments they had about moving forward while she remained stuck in the past. He mentioned that she isolated herself and had been verbally abusive to Luna for a long time. Even though she seemed to have changed during Luna's pregnancy, my father-in-law pointed out that those 13 months of being kind did not erase the 4 years of neglect and emotional harm. He hoped that the hospital could help her. Jocelyn told me I needed to forgive Mary Soul so that I could also forgive myself. At this moment, as I write, things are relatively stable. Jocelyn and I share a deep bond, and last week, Roberto left for Saudi Arabia. Luna is attempting to stay strong while he is away, but she is struggling. She has been leaning heavily on Jocelyn and me for support. I initially thought Jocelyn might feel overwhelmed, but she has been incredibly loving and supportive, enjoying her time with Luna. She truly is a remarkable woman. She is truly a remarkable woman. She has been taking Luna all around town and proudly introducing her as her daughter. Initially, I thought this might upset Luna, considering their complex past, but to my surprise, Luna was genuinely happy about it. This gave me a sense of relief and allowed me to forgive Mary Soul. I hold on to the hope that she can find the strength to move forward in life. Now, as I provide this update, I want to express my gratitude to everyone, even those who doubted me or had negative things to say. A year ago, when I first shared my story, I was in a very dark place. I felt trapped in a cycle of anger, loss, and depression. The support I received from this community has been invaluable, and it has helped me regain my footing. I am forever thankful to you all, and your kindness will remain in my heart. This past year has been a journey, filled with both highs and lows. I now have another son, and my partner, Jocelyn, has expressed interest in trying for another baby. Excitingly, Luna is currently 2 months pregnant, and my son-in-law has applied for officer training school. I am hopeful that he will be accepted. Luna has been showing signs of improvement in her mental health, especially since starting therapy. Her therapist introduced her to prolonged exposure therapy, which has been challenging. At first, Luna's panic attacks were mild, but they escalated into severe episodes. Our therapy sessions together were tough, as we both needed to confront our past mistakes and share our experiences. Luna has been working on my in-laws' ranch, doing simple but important tasks like feeding horses and distributing hay. My mother-in-law has been teaching her how to work with bison. It brings me joy to see Luna on a horse, her face lighting up with happiness. The bond between her and Jocelyn is heartwarming. They act like mother and daughter, and I find it adorable how overprotective Jocelyn is of her. I feel truly blessed to have married such an amazing woman. When I first met Mary Soul, she had just escaped a very abusive relationship. I remember she had a swollen eye and bruises around her throat. I volunteered to fix her father's 3 tractors for free, as they had been damaged by her ex. At first, I kept my distance, but as she began bringing me food, we struck up conversations and got to know each other better. Within a month, we went on our first date, and it was wonderful. However, not long after, her ex came to confront me, attempting to intimidate me. I stood my ground and made it clear to him that I wouldn't back down. In early May, my ex-father-in-law passed away, and I feared that this loss would trigger Luna's relapse. Thankfully, she remained strong, largely due to Roberto's support during that tough time. Roberto had a significant impact on Luna's life, and I will always be grateful to him for his guidance. We all traveled to New York for the viewing. Roberto's family honored him in a beautiful way, complete with a live salsa band, an open bar, and a buffet filled with his favorite foods such as pastels and pernil. The atmosphere was vibrant, and there was a banner above his casket that read, "Do not mourn me, celebrate me." The casket was draped in a Puerto Rican flag, and he wore a suit that reminded me of vanilla ice cream. I couldn't help but smile throughout the celebration of his life. Mary Soul attended, but she seemed distant and lost, staring blankly into space. It was as if her mind had shut down, only to come back to life when Luna or I sat beside her. During the second day of the viewing, her therapist shared something concerning. Mary Soul's mind appears to be stuck in a moment when she was happiest. The therapist suggested that there may have been a traumatic experience involving my cousin, which Mary Soul's mind has tried to protect her from. It was shocking to hear this, and I shared the revelation with Jocelyn. She insisted that I must tell Luna, but I hesitated. Luna had made great progress in her healing, and I didn't want to risk undoing her hard work. Instead, we decided to speak with Roberto first, who was understandably furious and wanted to confront my cousin. I managed to talk him down, and we ultimately sat down as a family to discuss everything with Luna. That conversation turned out to be extremely difficult, emotions ran high, and it was a tough night for all of us. Just 2 days later, we faced another crisis at the burial. My cousin arrived uninvited and caused a scene. He was intoxicated and yelling, which made my blood boil. I was ready to confront him, but Roberto held me back. My cousin's actions were completely unacceptable, and I wanted to make sure he left without causing further disruption. My cousin erupted in a loud outburst, declaring that he had always been superior to me and always would be. He insisted that it was his influence, along with that of his daughter, which motivated me to improve my life. In a twisted sense, he took credit for my personal growth. Anger surged through me at his words, and in a fit of rage, I nearly lifted Roberto off the ground, ready to confront him. Before I could act, Luna intervened, landing a punch squarely on Roberto's mouth and unleashing a flurry of blows on him. She was overcome with emotion, her screams and tears a testament to her fury as she kept attacking him. In a moment of uncertainty, I hesitated, and during this pause, Roberto managed to push her away as he stood up. Just then, Jocelyn landed a punch on him, knocking him unconscious, but in the process, she broke her index finger. After the chaos, we returned home and held a family meeting. During this discussion, we all came to the consensus that transferring Mary's soul to a nearby mental health facility was necessary, as we felt that we had exhausted our ability to provide her the support she needed at home. Therapy remained a vital part of our lives, yet with the recent revelations about Mary's soul, my daughter faced the challenging reality of possibly being a child conceived through an act of violence. This new understanding weighed heavily on us, especially since prior to these events, I had considered adopting her, as legally, she was no longer recognized as my daughter. I yearned to formalize our bond again, but I sensed that the timing for such a decision might not be right. To the community that has supported me so much, I express my sincere gratitude and am ready to answer any questions you might have. This is an important moment, and I owe you all the updates since my last video. Hello everyone, it has been some time since I last shared, and I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to each of you. My family continues to grow, and I am blessed with 2 grandchildren, a boy and a girl, along with 2 sons and another daughter on the way. Despite these joys, I grappling with feelings of guilt and sadness after learning about Mary's soul's experience during her hypnotherapy session. The therapist revealed that during the session, she said, "No, Weiss," froze for over a minute, and pleaded for it to stop, which marked the moment my cousin attacked her. When she finally rolled to her side, she repeatedly insisted that it was all a mistake, convincing herself it was so. This revelation hit me hard, it caused a deep cloud of depression to envelop me. I found myself blaming not only my cousin but also directing that blame inward. I became consumed by thoughts of what-if scenarios, replaying family interactions in my mind to uncover any signs I might have missed. In hindsight, everything became painfully clear. Whenever he was in our home, Mary's soul avoided being alone with him. I had overlooked this, but now it stood out vividly. The truth often arrives with a heavy burden. Over the coming months, Luna and I attended family therapy sessions with Mary's soul. Similar to what many of you may have experienced, the therapist posed tough questions. He asked me how I would have responded if Mary's soul had confided in me about her trauma at the time it occurred. My gut reaction was that I would have confronted my cousin, fiercely protecting her. If she had revealed the truth years later, I imagined the violence of my reaction, wanting to mete out punishment to my cousin for the pain he caused. When I reflected on how I might have reacted during our family gatherings, I acknowledged that I would have been skeptical at first. However, my determination to uncover the truth would have driven me to investigate further. Eventually, Mary's soul began to find comfort in our discussions. She apologized repeatedly to both Luna and me. As we continued to engage, Mary's soul revealed that her focus on being an exceptional wife had stemmed from her struggles with not being able to give me another child. When I stepped away, she confessed that every time she looked at our daughter, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was seeing my cousin instead. I questioned her on why she allowed him to remain in our lives, and she explained that in her mind, he was like a brother to me. She had always admired him, especially after his rise to becoming a pastor. I had often sought his advice, and she viewed his actions as a fleeting mistake that wouldn't go away, choosing to avoid him whenever possible. Luna faced a resurgence of panic attacks, though they became more manageable with time. Recently, I officially adopted her as a birthday gift, and the joy on her face was unforgettable. She was overwhelmed with happiness. Meanwhile, I learned that my cousin had moved to Puerto Rico after being let go from his job at the bank. The bank faced a serious situation that forced them to make a difficult decision. They had to let him go. This choice came after a significant number of individuals started walking into the bank, creating disturbances that could not be ignored. In the midst of this turmoil, a new trailer was placed next to Luna for Mary's soul. Mary's soul had just been released in mid-March and, initially, the atmosphere was incredibly tense and awkward. I often thought about TV shows that depict similar scenarios, portraying ex-wives and current wives mingling together as if it were all easy and friendly. But reality was different. Jocelyn, my current wife, maintained a civil demeanor towards Mary's soul. She made it clear that there were boundaries Mary's soul needed to respect. Mary's soul expressed her desire not to stay on our property but to remain close to us. More than anything, she wanted to embrace her role as a mother and grandmother. She envisioned a friendship with me, but one that would remain at a distance. I understood and respected her wishes. There were instances when Jocelyn and Mary Soul clashed, primarily over differing opinions on childrearing and household cooking habits. This created an unsettling atmosphere, further complicated by the fact that my in-laws, like me, felt awkward about the entire situation. Adding to the tension was my brother-in-law, who seemed a bit taken with Mary Soul. His infatuation was evident enough that Jocelyn smacked him on the back of his head in an effort to bring him back to reality. Unfortunately, that little gesture did not change his feelings. He is 2 years older than me, a widower for 2 years with 3 young daughters. Despite the complications, he is a genuinely nice man and a capable wrangler, who has been spending more time around our property than I had anticipated, simply to talk to Mary Soul. I didn't mind his presence, but Jocelyn certainly did. She felt very protective of her big brother and was concerned that if a relationship formed between him and Mary Soul, she wouldn't be able to discern whether his feelings were authentic. One notable incident occurred on Luna's birthday, shortly after presenting her with the adoption papers. I had the chance to dance with Luna and then with Jocelyn. However, when Mary Soul wanted to dance with me after I had danced with my brother-in-law and Jocelyn's brother, I turned her down respectfully. This action triggered an unexpected reaction from Jocelyn, revealing her territorial side. On Easter, while we were watching the children hunt for eggs, I overheard a conversation between Mary Soul and Jocelyn. Mary Soul expressed her envy towards Jocelyn for being able to give me children. Jocelyn firmly reminded her that Luna was, despite all circumstances, my daughter. This heartfelt exchange led to Mary Soul crying, marking a significant moment where they finally seemed to connect rather than clash. As time passes, I find myself hoping for a smoother balance among everyone involved. Healing from past traumas takes time and requires patience and understanding. A solid support system plays a vital role in this journey. My wife has been my pillar of support, demonstrating unwavering strength as she interacts with both our daughter and my ex-wife, even taking Mary Soul to a survivor group meeting weekly. Her dedication amazes me, making me feel truly blessed. I took a moment to express my gratitude to her, acknowledging how fortunate I am to have her in my life. Her wide smile and the kiss she gave me were a perfect reminder of our bond. She shared her own struggles, revealing the truth about her previous abusive relationship, and how her presence in my life was her way of paying it forward. We spent quiet evenings together, enjoying each other's company while watching TV, but then I received an instant message from my cousin that disrupted the peace. I quickly blocked him, not wanting to engage. A week later, a letter from him arrived, but I burned it without a second thought. Soon after, my wife informed me that her brother was thinking about asking her out. While I didn't have strong feelings about it, I did mention to her that Mary Soul is an adult on her own healing journey. If her brother truly understood that and was willing to wait patiently, I had no objections. Another day passed, and I received yet another letter from my cousin, which I promptly burned. Normally, I would be annoyed about how he tracked me down, but my unique name, inherited from my great-grandfather, made it relatively easy for him to find me online. By mid-June, we were enjoying a bonfire together. I glanced at my daughter and son-in-law, who were slow dancing to no music, their joy evident. My wife rested her head on my chest, and I witnessed a moment between my brother-in-law and Mary Soul, who shared a kiss. I couldn't help but smile at this development. However, just a few days later, my cousin reached out to Luna via Facebook, causing her to panic and have a meltdown. Thankfully, Roberto, my son-in-law, took swift action and blocked him. Later that day, we went to the supermarket, where my wife kept a watchful eye on everything, clearly affected by the ongoing drama. We were at the supermarket and my wife's ex-boyfriend unexpectedly returned to town and had the audacity to approach her. As I glanced at her, I could see the fear written all over her face, and that instinctively triggered a reaction in me. It wasn't a long fight, just a single punch, but I made sure it sent a strong message. My wife, who has always been my anchor and my support, was visibly shaken. The way her body trembled filled me with a fierce protective instinct toward her. I wanted to jump on him and make him feel the fear he had instilled in her, but before I could act further, the sheriff intervened. He ordered the man to leave and then turned his attention to Jocelyn, checking to see if she was okay. In all the years we have been together, I had never witnessed her in such a state of terror. While the sheriff spoke to us, I could see her ex walking past the window, and the smug smile on his face fueled my anger. The sheriff noticed my glare and gently grabbed my arm, advising me to take Jocelyn home instead of losing my temper. During the drive home, an uneasy silence enveloped the car. When we finally got inside, all she wanted was for me to hold her tightly and never let go. Our dog, Luna, sensed something was wrong and was visibly concerned. Jocelyn pulled Luna into our embrace, and it was a moment none of us had experienced before. Seeing my wife so fragile made my need to protect her even stronger. Later that same day, Jocelyn's brother arrived at our house. He told us that he and the sheriff had paid a visit to her ex, warning him to stay away from Jocelyn. However, that warning fell on deaf ears, as the next day, her ex appeared at my shop, threatening to sue me for assault. I simply smiled at him and told him that in the time he spent running his mouth, I could think of several ways to make him disappear. That comment silenced him, but for the following week and a half, he continued to test our limits. The whole time, Jocelyn was filled with dread, constantly worried that he might act out against her or me. Jocelyn's brother, who works as a game warden, warned her ex to steer clear of us, but that only resulted in the man reporting her brother to his supervisor. It was a frustrating situation, and every time I felt the urge to confront him, Jocelyn pleaded with me not to. Despite that, my role as her husband compelled me to protect her. I made a promise to her that I wouldn't approach him directly. Jocelyn's father later filled me in on the history he had with her ex. He told me about everything that man had done to her in the past and how he had come close to getting rid of him once. However, just when he was seriously considering it, the man suffered a serious injury that put him out of town for a while. Listening to that story brought a smile to my face, knowing some justice had been served. On the 29th, as we were getting ready for the upcoming Western Idaho Fair, I received a letter from my cousin. I decided to leave it on my desk for now. Mary Soul, a family friend, approached me and asked if it would be okay for her to pursue a relationship with Jocelyn's brother. I told her it was fine, but only if she felt ready for it. She shrugged and admitted she didn't know what she truly wanted, but she did like him and thought about him and his kids often. I encouraged her to find her happiness, and when she began to cry, I felt a sense of joy for her. Her tears were those of relief and happiness. Suddenly, my phone rang, and it was the sheriff. He informed me that Jocelyn's ex and another man had ended up in the hospital with severe injuries. I braced myself for accusations but was surprised when the sheriff explained that he had my son-in-law in custody. He told me there were many witnesses who came forward in support of him. I didn't want to hear all the details over the phone, so I rushed to the sheriff's office. When I arrived, I noticed Luna waiting at the front desk with a bruise on her left cheek. The sheriff approached me and detailed what had happened. Apparently, Jocelyn's ex had deliberately bumped into Roberto as he and Luna were leaving a coffee shop. An argument ensued, and when Roberto tried to calm things down, another man appeared and shoved him. Luna, feeling protective, pushed back against both men, which resulted in her getting hit. This defense prompted Roberto to defend her, resulting in both men ending up in the hospital. The sheriff decided not to press charges but had to inform Roberto's commander about the incident. After being released, Roberto had to leave immediately for a long drive to Yuma. Luna was filled with guilt, blaming herself for pushing Jocelyn's ex. Meanwhile, Jocelyn tried to comfort her sister, feeling guilty for the entire situation. Mary Soul surprisingly stepped up to support both of them. Just when things seemed to settle, a new development occurred when a woman who was 6 months pregnant came to my shop. She asked for my name, and when I saw her, she revealed that she was my cousin. When I encountered her, she revealed that she was engaged to my cousin, which completely took me off guard. My cousin is battling leukemia and has been reaching out to me, as well as to Luna and Mary Soul, in an attempt to make amends for past wrongs. In that moment, I found myself asking her to leave, but she stood her ground. She insisted that both Luna and I should undergo testing to determine if we are suitable matches for donating bone marrow. Overcome with emotion, she burst into tears, expressing her deep fear that her child would grow up without a father. I told her directly that it would be a favor to her child if she did not pursue that path. In response, she slapped me, clearly hurt by my words. She stated that my cousin had been completely transparent with her about his past. She knew all the mistakes he had made, but despite that, she wanted him to be a part of their child's life. She continued to plead with me to get tested. I couldn't shake the feeling that I would probably be a match, which felt like typical bad luck for me. After that encounter, I returned to my office and opened a letter from my cousin, bracing myself for what I thought would be a desperate plea for help. Instead, I found a confession. He had shared everything he had done throughout his life. He wrote about how, growing up, he looked up to me and admired me, but when I started to rebel and joined the Latin Kings, he grew to resent me for the distress it caused our grandmother. He blamed me for taking everything for granted, despite the fact that I had always tried to guide him back to the right path by encouraging him to stay in school. He viewed me as a hypocrite for failing to follow my own advice. In the letter, he confessed that taking Mary's soul away from him had pushed him over the edge. He had expected me to fail in my efforts to improve my life after being stabbed and arrested, and he saw that as a form of divine intervention that pushed him to pursue her, even after she had turned him down. He acknowledged in the letter that because of his choices, the woman he loved was suffering, and he felt he had ruined his daughter while destroying the only person who had ever loved him unconditionally. He also mentioned that if his fiancée ever came to see me and claimed he was sick, it would be true, but he did not want Luna or me to get tested. He had made his choices, and he accepted that the consequences would be his alone to bear. In conclusion, he expressed his heartfelt apologies to all of us. Not long after reading the letter, I met with my pastor to spill my emotions. He drew a comparison between me and Job from the Bible, which struck me as ironic since I had always disliked the book of Job. My pastor explained that everyone experiences struggles, though some face greater challenges than others. He emphasized the importance of comforting those in pain and how adversity helps us grow as individuals. Earlier today, I made my way to the hospital. One of the benefits of living in a small town is that everyone is usually aware of one another's situations. A nurse guided me to the room where Jocelyn's former partner was staying. As I sat there waiting for him to wake up, he was noticeably surprised to see me. We had a discussion, and although his jaw was wired shut, he fully grasped the kind of person I would become if he ever harmed my family again. It amazed me how quickly I could tap into that dark side of myself. At this moment, I find myself sitting in the cancer ward, typing out this lengthy reflection on my phone as I contemplate undergoing testing to see if I am indeed a match. I can't help but wonder why we continually face these tests in life, why we must endure so much, and why there are individuals intent on sabotaging everything. Update 8. I want to extend my gratitude to everyone, including the naysayers I encountered at the Idaho State Fair who were surprised to find out we are real people. Right now, I am sitting on the balcony of my hotel room, having spoken to my wife and kids a few hours ago. I miss them dearly. Just 2 hours ago, I buried my cousin, and I was the only person there for his funeral, the only one to attend his wake. When I announced my intention to donate my marrow to him, Luna was taken aback, while Jocelyn expressed pride in my choice to rise above the situation. Mary's soul conveyed her understanding, acknowledging that despite my past transgressions, I had never taken a life. I underwent a series of blood tests to ensure I could proceed with the donation, even traveling to Puerto Rico in November to personally inform him of my decision. When I arrived, he looked incredibly frail, struggling to muster a smile upon seeing me. He thought my visit was meant for forgiveness, but I clarified that my purpose was to offer my help. When I encountered her, she revealed that she was engaged to my cousin, which completely took me off guard. My cousin is battling leukemia and has been reaching out to me, as well as to Luna and Mary's soul, in an attempt to make amends for past wrongs. In that moment, I found myself asking her to leave, but she stood her ground. She insisted that both Luna and I should undergo testing to determine if we are suitable matches for donating bone marrow. Overcome with emotion, she burst into tears, expressing her deep fear that her child would grow up without a father. I told her directly that it would be a favor to her child if she did not pursue that path. In response, she slapped me, clearly hurt by my words. She stated that my cousin had been completely transparent with her about his past, she knew all the mistakes he had made, but despite that, she wanted him to be a part of their child's life. She continued to plead with me to get tested. I couldn't shake the feeling that I would probably be a match, which felt like typical bad luck for me. After that encounter, I returned to my office and opened a letter from my cousin, bracing myself for what I thought would be a desperate plea for help. Instead, I found a confession. He had shared everything he had done throughout his life. He wrote about how, growing up, he looked up to me and admired me, but when I started to rebel and joined the Latin Kings, he grew to resent me for the distress it caused our grandmother. He blamed me for taking everything for granted, despite the fact that I had always tried to guide him back to the right path by encouraging him to stay in school. He viewed me as a hypocrite for failing to follow my own advice. In the letter, he confessed that taking Mary's soul away from him had pushed him over the edge. He had expected me to fail in my efforts to improve my life after being stabbed and arrested, and he saw that as a form of divine intervention that pushed him to pursue her, even after she had turned him down. He acknowledged in the letter that because of his choices, the woman he loved was suffering, and he felt he had ruined his daughter while destroying the only person who had ever loved him unconditionally. He also mentioned that if his fiancée ever came to see me and claimed he was sick, it would be true, but he did not want Luna or me to get tested. He had made his choices, and he accepted that the consequences would be his alone to bear. In conclusion, he expressed his heartfelt apologies to all of us. Not long after reading the letter, I met with my pastor to spill my emotions. He drew a comparison between me and Job from the Bible, which struck me as ironic since I had always disliked the book of Job. My pastor explained that everyone experiences struggles, though some face greater challenges than others. He emphasized the importance of comforting those in pain and how adversity helps us grow as individuals. Earlier today, I made my way to the hospital. One of the benefits of living in a small town is that everyone is usually aware of one another's situations. A nurse guided me to the room where Jocelyn's former partner was staying. As I sat there waiting for him to wake up, he was noticeably surprised to see me. We had a discussion, and although his jaw was wired shut, he fully grasped the kind of person I would become if he ever harmed my family again. It amazed me how quickly I could tap into that dark side of myself. At this moment, I find myself sitting in the cancer ward, typing out this lengthy reflection on my phone as I contemplate undergoing testing to see if I am indeed a match. I can't help but wonder why we continually face these tests in life, why we must endure so much, and why there are individuals intent on sabotaging everything. Update 8. I want to extend my gratitude to everyone, including the naysayers I encountered at the Idaho State Fair who were surprised to find out we are real people. Right now, I am sitting on the balcony of my hotel room, having spoken to my wife and kids a few hours ago. I missed them dearly. Just 2 hours ago, I buried my cousin, and I was the only person there for his funeral, the only one to attend his wake. When I announced my intention to donate my marrow to him, Luna was taken aback, while Jocelyn expressed pride in my choice to rise above the situation. Mary Soul conveyed her understanding, acknowledging that despite my past transgressions, I had never taken a life. I underwent a series of blood tests to ensure I could proceed with the donation, even traveling to Puerto Rico in November to personally inform him of my decision. When I arrived, he looked incredibly frail, struggling to muster a smile upon seeing me. He thought my visit was meant for forgiveness, but I clarified that my purpose was to offer my help.